Let's dive in and get into how you set up and run some of these particular types of chargebacks in version 7. And we're going to start with bill calculations. When you think of bill calculations, I want you to think of meters. Bill calculations are always configured at a meter. And what a bill calculation is it's any time that you configure a meter to generate a bill from scratch. Okay? So different from bill splits. Bill splits, I have a bill and I need to do something with that bill. Bill calculation, on the other hand, you tell EnergyCap, how do you want EnergyCap to create a bill? And EnergyCap will create a bill from scratch in your system. That could be from submeter readings, it could be from other values that you provide us, it could be from a math calculation. In all those cases, it's you telling EnergyCap, how do you want us to calculate this bill? And you configure bill calculations at a meter level. As we went through the process of designing chargebacks in version 7, one of the things that we did is we separated the way you calculate use from the way you calculate cost. So for some people, they'd say, you know, I have a submeter that I can use to generate my usage information. But I really can't apply a rate to that because maybe I have a contractual agreement with a particular department. Maybe I'm working on a grant and I have a fixed rate that I have to charge. Maybe I have a tenant that I have a contract with and I have to charge a particular rate. We've now separated the use calculations and the setup of the use calculations from the cost so that you can do two separate things all in one bill. And I'll give you some examples of that in just a minute. So when we're looking at how do you calculate use in a bill calculation, you have 4 different options to choose from. You can use submeter readings. I've talked about that a number of times. So if you have a submeter that you're gathering data from, whether you're doing it manually or maybe some automated feed into EnergyCap, yes, we can calculate use based on your submeter data. You can also provide a fixed amount. So this is helpful, for instance, if you have lighting meters or virtual lighting meters. You don't actually have a meter at the pole, but you have some type of calculation that you've done to estimate what the lighting load is in a particular area. You can now plug that number into EnergyCap, and we can use that month after month to generate a bill as if you had a submeter in that place. Another option for calculating use is to copy it from another meter. This is a really exciting option, and I'll talk more about this when we demo within the application. But the idea here being there's some other meter in the system that I want to copy use from and duplicate it into another area. And then the last is what I referred to before as summary calculations. This is the ability to use math, simple math, to add or subtract meters or meter groups together in order to create a brand new bill based on that math. Now these are 4 ways to calculate use, and I've highlighted here in blue the ways that are new in version 7. So do you remember before when I said we're trying to make EnergyCap version 7 smarter, right? We've not only doubled, we've more than doubled the number of ways that you can calculate use within your chargebacks in version 7. So we're really excited about seeing all the different ways that our clients are going to use these features in order to create new bills in their system. So that's use. What about cost? Okay, so we've also added some new ways to calculate cost within your system as well. So you can use the use that you just calculated, whether it's from a submeter or it's a fixed amount, and you can apply some type of a rate to it. We've continued to support the idea that you can configure a rate within EnergyCap and use that rate to generate bills and to generate cost on your bills. But in some cases, it's helpful to just specify a specific unit cost. You don't want to go through the hassle of maybe maintaining a rate, and you just know for this particular meter, this is the unit cost that should be applied. Well, we've given you an option to do that right there. It's very transparent, very easy to use. We've also included the option that you've had before to use the unit cost from another meter. So the most common example of this is when you have a submeter and you'd like that submeter to reflect the cost of either the operating cost of an energy plant, or maybe it's the vendor cost of some feeder that's feeding into your submeter network. But we've also added a bunch of new options that don't rely on your use calculation in any way. As I mentioned before, you can put a fixed amount into the system. So if you have that tenant that you are always billing at a particular rate month after month after month, you can put that into your system. Energy Cap has two facilities that we operate. One of those facilities we lease, and at that facility, our electric bill is calculated exactly like that. It doesn't matter what our use is for the month, we always get billed the same amount from the landlord. So I've been trying to convince Steve that we ought to move our data center into that lease space, because I think that will probably help us out from a dollars and cents perspective. But maybe you're in a similar boat and you have those restrictions. You can now apply a fixed amount, and Energy Cap will just apply that to your bill. Another option is to copy costs from another meter. Similar to the copy use, maybe there's some other meter in the system that would be helpful to just glean some information off of and use here in the bill. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then the last, similar to use, on the cost side, you can also do advanced calculations. You can take certain meters or meter groups and add and subtract them to create some new cost on your bill. Yes, question?
On the fixed amount, is there versioning available on that, or is it you set one value and it's used for the calculations until you change it?
That's a great question. The question was, if you're using a fixed amount, is there versioning available? Can you have the rate change over time? And the answer to that is yes. Similar to chargeback versions, in version 3, version 7 has chargeback versions that apply for certain months. So you can say that I'm going to use this fixed amount for this period of time. It could be for the summer, it could be for the winter, it could be for an entire calendar year. And then I'm going to set up a new rate that goes beyond that. And you can even set that up in advance in the future so that you don't even have to worry when you get into the next year, you'll already be calculating those bills at the new rate. So, great question. Any others? All right, I showed you on the use side the new options that you have available for calculating use. And I'm going to highlight here the new options available on the cost side. And again, we've more than doubled the number of ways that you can calculate cost on your bills using bill calculations in Energy Cap version 7. So what does this look like? What are the steps involved with configuring something? We wanted to make this as practical a training as we could. So again, when you think about bill calculations, you always start at a meter. We're always talking about meters. So you go to a meter, and from its properties, you create a version. Just like the question that was just asked, you create a version to indicate for what time period should we use this set of calculations. Then you'll configure your use information and your cost information. And once you've completed those steps, you're ready to go. And Energy Cap now has enough information to generate a bill. There are additional options available. These are optional. But for some of you, I know they apply, where you may want to add additional meter line items to your bill, additional cost. Maybe it's a submeter reading fee that you're collecting, or some type of charge that your organization is charging to different parts of your facility tree or your accounting tree. You can do that here by adding additional meter line items or account line items. That's totally optional, but that is a feature that we've carried forward into bill calculations in version 7. To illustrate this point, I didn't want to just talk theoretically about it, so we are going to be walking through an example. The example that we're going to walk through today is an amusement park. I know you've all been interested in becoming carnies, right? Like that's everyone's lifelong dream. So today you get to live out that dream to be a carny, and we're going to start with our own small amusement park called Cosmos Park. Now Cosmos Park is pretty simple. It only has a couple of sections to the park. There's Astronaut's Cove, where we have some rides that are available for our visitors. We have Kiddieland with some smaller rides, but still several rides that are available there. And as you would expect, we also have park offices where we have some of our back office items, like our sales office and our data center and a warehouse. And we're going to use each of these different areas of the park to demonstrate the features of Energy Cap chargebacks in version 7. So at our small amusement park, we have 2 electric meters that we're billed for each month. 2 different feeders coming into the park for redundancy. Any given month, we may see more or less on electric meter 1 versus electric meter 2. But what is pretty much a given is that if I were to calculate the effective unit cost for either of these in a given month, they're never going to balance, right? The amount that I use compared with the fees that I pay or fixed rates, they're never going to completely balance. So it would be nice if maybe I could group those together to figure out what my total electric spend is for a given period. We've also dabbled with introducing submeters into our park. So we have 3 at this point. We have a submeter that represents all of the use in the Astronaut Cove area of the park. We have a submeter that represents Kittyland, and a submeter that represents all of the usage of our back office facilities as well. So if we were to just step away from Energy Cap and say, what are some ways that we would like to calculate cost or use in our park so that we can do accurate tracking, it might look something like this. We have 2 vendor bills that come in every month, and we'd like to be able to combine those together into one master bill. What that would allow us to do is reporting. Sure, we could report on the two meters by themselves, but one of the nice things about combining the costs together is I now have one place that I can look and find a real effective unit cost for a given month. By combining those bills together and all the use and the cost from both of those bills, I have a new unit cost that I can see on my system. It would be nice to be able to know what our submeters used. Not just what did they use, but what's the cost associated with operating those submeters. So we can look at particular areas of the park and see how they're performing. Another step would be to be able to figure out what's the difference between what we paid our vendors and what we calculated as our cost from our submeters. And even to know the difference between what did our vendor measure as our use for a given month versus what did we measure for use, right? Those types of measurements, now this is a very simple example, but if you think about a larger system, let's say a university system, those types of calculations really help you identify where you might have inconsistencies in your system, unmetered use, you might have leaks on your system as well. So we're going to calculate the difference between our vendor bill and our submeter usage for the given month. And taking that even one step further, wouldn't it be nice to true up the cost at the submeter level to the cost at the vendor level? What that means is that from an accounting perspective, if I add these 3 bills up, they will exactly match what I paid to the vendor. Incredibly helpful when you're talking about charging back other departments or other funds within your organization and needing to make sure that every penny is accounted for that went out the door to your vendors is also accounted for within your system. Once we've done that and we've gotten these submeters to a place where they represent really well what our use and our cost for the month has been, now we can go ahead and do a split to the downstream facilities. These are facilities that don't have submeters. If they did, we'd use those submeters to do calculations. But we can do a split to the different rides. We can do a split to each of the different facilities that we have in our back office so that we can do some facility analysis. So these are the 5 primary steps that we're going to be talking through as we walk through our workflow together today.